Hi there, this is Solitaire Ronin and welcome to Solitaire Ronin Films. And it's time for another double take. And today's double take is of Kim Jee-woon's 1998 film, The Quiet Family, on this lovely Nova Media edition. And Miike Takashi's 2001 film, The Happiness of the Katakuris, on this lovely Arrow edition. Now these are two films of the same story. Miike Takashi's film is a remake, made 3 years after. They share the same story, but the telling of that story is handled slightly differently. It's a simple tale of a family who have decided to go into business with each other and have a bed and breakfast or a lodge on the bottom of a mountain. But the business is very slow. And when business does eventually start to flow, so does the blood. Their first guest commits suicide, and instead of alerting the authorities, they kind of want to protect their business, so they bury the suicide victim. And other guests come to stay, and various misfortunes and accidents occur. Both films are comedies. The Quiet Family is slightly darker. This was Kim Jee-woon's debut film. It's very assured. There's kind of hints of, because personally I think Kim Jee-woon is arguably in the top 2 or 3 directors working at the moment. So there's already signs of mastery of the form, great technique. It stars, amongst others, Min-sik Choi and Kang Ho Song, kind of before they were famous. Before Old Boy and Good, the Bad and the Weird and Taxi Driver and other films. I Saw the Devil. And it's The Quiet Family is arguably the better made film. It is, like I said, it's kind of blackly comic, as this poor family is just beset by unfortunate events. For example, they bury bodies and then the local council decide they're going to build a road, so they end up having to dig up the bodies and move the bodies about. I mean, it is farcical. There's plots with landowners wanting to bump off their siblings to get inheritance, and hitmen and miscommunication, and there's just lots of fun involved. Now, The Happiness of the Katakuris is a completely different kettle of corpses. This is probably Takashi Miike's 42nd or 43rd film by this time. And he took the basic plot of The Quiet Family and added claymation, added songs. It's a musical, folks. Added typical Miike flair. The zombies. One of the taglines is "The hills are alive with the sound of screaming." You could argue not everything in it works. You could argue at 113 minutes it's a little too long. But it's funny because I hadn't actually watched Happiness of the Katakuris for a little while. But just looking at stills on the internet, I immediately got songs in my head. And I think Takashi Miike's film will put a smile on your face more than The Quiet Family. Of the two, despite its flaws, I think I prefer Happiness of the Katakuris. Takashi Miike, when he's at his best, and you can argue he's not always at his best just because his production is just ridiculous, the number of films he makes. But when he's at his best, he shows you things that you've never seen before. Now, that might be things you don't really want to see. It might be things that you perhaps never really had any thought to see. But he will take you places that you just never really thought a film could go. And The Happiness of the Katakuris just goes all over the shop. I mean, it just opens randomly with this little creature stealing a bit of a girl's throat and flying away with it, and then being attacked by a bird, and then the bird shot. It's quite bizarre. But the funny thing is, at the end of The Happiness of the Katakuris, it's actually quite moving. And it's one of those films that you don't actually know why it's moving, but it's actually quite moving at the end, as certain things happen to certain family members. There's a scene that breaks out into karaoke. There is full-blown Busby Berkeley singing and dance routines as this shady character tries to woo the daughter of the Katakuris by posing as this naval spy James Bond who's very close to Princess Diana. It's just, I'm not going to sit and explain it because it makes no sense, but it makes complete sense. There's a wonderful moment where the son thinks he's been stabbed mortally, so he goes into this moving, tearful song as he goes round all the family members, telling the daughter to, keep faith and keep searching for love, and thanking his father for being such a great dad and all of that. And then he realises it's actually just a scratch, so he just kind of gets up and sheepishly walks away. I mean, you will laugh out loud. Granted, I showed my family The Happiness of the Katakuris, and they just kind of sat there like, what's going on? I think between the two films, it's going to depend on what your sense of humour is, or what kind of mood you're in. They're both very good films. Like I say, I think I just prefer The Happiness of the Katakuris, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with The Quiet Family. Its humour is kind of more understated It's less colourful, it's less bananas than Miike's film, but that shouldn't surprise anybody who's familiar with Takashi Miike. Again, you could argue sometimes he's just does things to be a provocateur, but I think the happiness of the Katakuris just works because it's just so barking, and again, in the end, it is almost like The Sound of Music as they run across the hillside. The happiness of the Katakuris features Pochi the dog a lot more. The dog is in The Quiet Family, but it's an understated performance, whereas Pochi in Happiness of the Katakuris has a major role. Obviously he throws in claymation, he also throws in kind of stop motion puppetry. It's a free for all basically, and again, not everybody's going to enjoy it, not everybody's going to get it, but if you're that way inclined, The Happiness of the Katakuris is just lots of fun. But again, The Quiet Family is fun too, but in a kind of different way. You know, Kim Jee WOON, it's more classy, it's more polished, it's less rough around the edges than The Happiness of the Katakuris, which is all over the place. So please let me know in the comments below whether you have seen either of these films or both these films, which one you prefer, or whether my rambling has intrigued you to check these ones out. Again, this Nova Media Blu-ray of The Quiet Family is fantastic, because I actually had it on DVD, but the first time I watched, I didn't actually get past about 10 minutes because the print was so awful. So if you can, I would recommend getting the Nova Media Blu-ray, because it is a beautiful film and a beautiful print, and you really get to see Kim Jee WOON's lovely vision on a proper print. So thanks very much for watching. Please leave the comments below. I always enjoy reading them and gaining knowledge from you, and hopefully we'll see you again for another double take. This is Solitude from Solitude Films saying farewell and have a pleasant evening.